Permanent values, part 14. The Quran itself is a permanent value. These are the references, and this is our contact in case there is any query, question regarding this presentation or any of our past presentations. Now, a word about Quran as a permanent value. We have gone through 39 permanent values and discussed them in fair amount of detail. And then we thought that Quran should be taken as a permanent value because it encompasses all other permanent values. And this is a big subject, but what we will do is that today we will more or less introduce it, and then we should have one or two more presentations just to explore this aspect a bit further. Some reflections on the permanent values covered so far. We have now covered some aspects of 39 permanent values in some detail and also looked at their impact on the human psyche. There was a mistake in the list of these permanent values. I thought we have covered 40, but Brother Asif Jalil pointed out that I had by mistake put down 2 successively in the list, the same, and I now amended it. The system of deen is structured within the domain of these values. Related to these values are also the divine attributes which are reflected by the Jamaat-e-Momineen in their developed self prior to the establishment of this system. The human systems created by the human intellect are based on relative values which keep changing in direct proportion to the will of those who control these systems. And we see that because those who control the capitalist system, for example, as they change their opinion and they change their directions and lawmaking, we will see that the changes appear in the system. Thus, the human self, which is shaped under these values, and if it is unaware, simply cannot have those characteristics which are manifested within the domain of the permanent values. And this is another important point, that if we are unaware, then we become part of the system in which we are born. So the Quran is asking us to become aware of what is going on around you in the system and don't become a victim of it just because you are not aware of it. The human self, that is after acquiring new life, which emerges under the domain of the permanent values and divine attributes, acquires that permanence of character, the holders of which are termed by the Quran as Momineen, Muttaqeen, Salihin, Mohsineen. Once the human self acquires this permanence, and that is important, permanence, because if we do not become Momin, Muttaqi, Salihin, Mohsineen as defined by the Quran, then there is no permanence within us, then we will conform to the system in which we are living. Then it becomes ready to be handed over to the next phase of its development, i.e. the life of the hereafter. So the whole idea is that the Quran is asking us to create that permanence within itself through the permanent values and divine attributes which are noted in the Quran in order to take maximum benefit from this life and to establish the system of deen. Coming to grips with comprehending these values helps to identify many latent potentials within ourselves which lead to accepting Iman and doing Saleh deeds with a view to commence displaying these newly acquired character traits individually as well as collectively in the world. Now next, what I've done is permanent values covered so far. And I thought that since we are discussing the Quran as a permanent value, it is important that we go through all the permanent values which we have covered so far, so that in future, if anyone wishes to know these values, then they can be referred to this particular presentation, that is the part 1 of the Quran as a permanent value. The first value which we covered was the human self. The second one was respect for humanity or respect as a human being. Third one was the concept of Allah. And we know the concept of Allah given in the Quran is a fact-based concept. It is not a religious concept or man-made concept. It has a particular connotation, a particular importance, and this is based on divine attributes. Ranks according to deeds. We know that the Quran says that your position in the society, in the world, is how you behave, how you once acquiring iman, then how you carry out the righteous deeds, and then as a result you define the position of your own self. The law of requital, everything follows laws in the human world, and law of requital means that whatever man does, he or she is accountable for that. Physical death is a fact of life. One may say that how does it become a permanent value? Death is the test for human self, whether it has qualified itself for the life of the hereafter or not. And death has a very deep psychological impact on human beings. So death becomes a permanent value because every human being is going to taste death. And Quran says, Kullu nafsin zaikatul maut. Justice. Next is ihsan, where we help people to restore their balance. The existence of the life of the hereafter is absolutely important to understand, because life of the hereafter exists because we all possess a human self which does not die with our physical death. So hereafter, as explained in the Quran, is a fact of life. The consequence of a crime is next permanent value. No one carries the burden of another. Very important, everyone should take his own responsibility, not to allow injustice in the world or in the system. No human being can be the subject of another one. Very important, all human beings are equal. Hence, one human being does not have a right to control another human being through man-made laws. All human beings should accept the rule of Allah through His book, and as a result are subjected to one law only. And obviously this is only possible under the system of deen. Obedience of the law is next permanent value. Then is promote good and forbid evil. And we see this throughout the Quran, where Quran says, Ta'muruna bil ma'rufi wa nahyanil munkar. Warning and admonishment, Quran says that no nation is destroyed unless they have been adequately warned. The system of mutual consultation, and that holds key to managing the system of deen. Never assign state duties to incompetent people, and we can see the consequences of it even under man-made system. If responsibilities are given to those people who are incompetent, what happens to that system? The responsibility for risk is on the society. The means of risk, Quran says these should be kept under the control of the state, that is Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, who manages the system of deen. What is beyond your need? Very important. We have gone through a lot of details that human beings ultimately under the system of deen hand over whatever they earn so that the system functions and they become free from all kinds of worries related to their physical needs. Mankind is one ummah. Chastity. There is no compulsion in the matter of deen. Absolutely important. We should check our own self as well, whether we have accepted Iman in the Quran and in Allah through our own free volition, or we are forced to accept it because we are born Muslims. What is good for mankind remains on earth. Next value is reward is for the work, not the capital. With this permanent value, the whole capitalist system disappears from the planet Earth. Good deeds replace the effects of bad deeds. Next is Iman and Saleh deeds is a very unique, important formula, recipe put forward by the Quran that if you follow this, then power will come in your direction as per the law. No restriction to be placed on free movement. Human beings do not have a right to draw lines on the planet Earth. This planet is made available to every human child born anywhere in the world. No contradiction between word and deed. Allah's laws are immutable. The state of a people can only change when their psyche changes. No yatim and miskeen in the world. And we have seen that how much Quran puts emphasis on dealing with this issue. And Quran wants us that there should be no yatim and miskeen in the world. And when we talk of yatim and miskeen, it is not only the physical needs, it is also their cognitive needs, the needs of their self-development. Only those receive guidance who seek it. Knowledge, we covered it in 3 parts and went into a lot of detail. Amal, that is action. No to riba in deen, and it was also covered in 3 parts. Aesthetic sense, those finer aspects of, for example, appreciating beauty and appreciating beauty in others and the pleasures of life by sharing the values and the means of sustenance together as one big community of human beings. This all forms part of this aesthetic sense. Freedom from fear and grief, we have recently covered it in 2 parts. Now, what I have done over here is that since we are dealing with Quran as a permanent value, I thought it is worth it to go through some of the relative values which we are experiencing in the world of 2025, because then it will provide us contrast and we can compare the two. Under the man-made system, might is right, and we are seeing the example of it. Survival of the fittest. Now, this may be true under the evolution of animal kingdom, but under the human system, survival of the fittest is a wrong value because every human being is important, whether he or she is disabled, gone old, or frail, or is not well. Ends justify the means. We can see that. The decision based on the majority, for example, if 51% say that day is night, then the day becomes night. That is again wrong. The human life ends with physical death, and that is the assumption on which most humanity is living their life at the moment. I.e., once the brain dies, there is nothing to carry forward, no life of the hereafter. There is nothing within man which can survive human death. There is no accountability beyond human physical death. The accountability in the word is according to the laws of a nation, society. That is why, for example, presently, if there are over 190 countries, there are 190 different systems of accountability in the world. Divide and conquer, this value is followed by all powerful nation states. Those who acquire power possess the right to make laws to control other human beings. Others are meant to obey these laws, and most of the human beings, they willingly obey those laws and do not question the validity of those laws or these human beings. So whether they follow the laws or human beings, both is wrong if these are man-made. Majority assumes that there is no alternative to the man-made systems. And this is what is crucial in the light of the Quran, because Quran says that you should understand the man-made systems and then reject those based on these relative values. Next is, there is no upper limit on the accumulation of wealth individually as well as collectively. And this is the position under religions as well. There is no upper limit on the size of land possessed by a person. And that is why nowadays we see even countries want to acquire more land by displacing others. And we are seeing that in Gaza. Next is, it is permitted to tell lies and deceive other nations as part of so-called diplomacy. Continuous state of lies and duplicitous behavior. And we are actually breathing in that kind of a behavior in the world if all these lies were becoming visible. These are everywhere. Creating wars, conflicts, chaos, imbalances, exploitation by those in power is permitted in order to snatch the means of sustenance and other resources from other people who are weak and are kept weak and poor through deliberate policies under the capitalist system. And we see that being practiced day and night. Promoting divisions among mankind who were born equal as human beings and keeping existing divisions of race, color, caste, language, religions, nationalities, political affinities, and the list goes on. In fact, some of the people say that we should have differences because we are different human beings. And whole sectarian Islam is based on these divisions. Deliberate creation of fear and grief to keep the masses subdued. Manufacturing consent through media manipulation and indoctrination through the spreading of lies. First, creating poverty knowingly through exploitation and then resorting to charitable work to cover up these misdemeanors. Drawing lines on Allah's planet. Next relative value is declaring ownership of the land at an individual as well as collective level, which only belongs to Allah. And this is one important point we should keep in mind as students of the Quran, that no one in the world has the right to own any piece of land. And see how much unburdened one will become if one does not possess these kind of material things and which actually belong to Allah. So taking over the responsibility of some piece of land which does not belong to you obviously is going to create some dissonance. So we can imagine how much this humanity is suffering from dissonances. For example, when we are born, we do not own any land. And when we die or leave this life, we simply cannot take anything with us. The only thing which we take with us is scroll of our own deeds under the law of requital. Subjecting equal human beings to different justice systems across the world. As I said earlier, over 190 countries, the same human being, if he goes through all these 190 countries, will be subjected to different laws of justice. Continuous changing of laws to suit those in power. And this creates horrendous amount of fear and uncertainty in the world. Subjecting human beings to physical and mental torture deliberately and continuously. Lack of deference for human life, respect and dignity. And this is again very important because Quran says, "Laqad karamna bani Adama," and human beings are going against that law on a daily basis. Denying the existence of the continuity of human life beyond death, thus spreading misguidance across the world. Opposing those who promote the permanent values and the system of deen using the Quran. And we experience it that the moment we talk about the pure Quran to someone, there is a disgust and dislike on their faces. They don't like it. Giving priority to material things, for example, land over human life, and we see this being demonstrated in the Middle East and elsewhere. Destroying further already fragile family structure. Whatever fragile family structure exists in the man-made systems, they are trying to now destroy that under the World Economic Forum's agenda. And we know that the Quran wants us to raise a family on the basis of Iman, as noted in verse 221 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Some more values: absence of family planning leading to the arrival of unwanted children in an unjust world. And family planning over here does not mean just the contraception side of it, but knowing that how important it is to bring up children under the right environment so that their life in this world is good as well as they have acquired the life of the hereafter as well. And unwanted means that all those children who arrive in the world unplanned. Child abuse at all levels across the world, for example, child poverty, pedophilia, child labor, trafficking, diseases, vaccines, sex education. False concepts of Allah, impact on human outlook leading to false beliefs. For example, the beliefs of Qismat, Jesus died for our sins, heaven is not dependent on deeds. And all these false concepts have formed human psyche, and this world is created by these kind of psyches. Willful blindness, use of alcohol, drugs and intoxicants and promoting its use. Man-made systems are based on one choice, i.e. to live life under the domain of these relative values, and this is animalistic living, as animals do not possess choice. This is a very important point which needs our very profound reflection, that under the man-made system we are literally living without any choice in our life, which means that we become animals because animals do not have a choice. So the Quran comes in and provides us the choice of an alternative system called deen. LGBTQ, and I have put down over here, which means lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, which is questioning what exactly they are. And this is an agenda which is deliberately being promoted across the world. Contradiction between word and deed, and it's a serious crime according to the Quran. Loose and meaningless conversations 24/7 at all levels. And we can see that happening everywhere. And we should become very conscious of it, that whatever conversations we become involved, that should be meaningful. Now over here, what I've done is that I've drawn a schematic, which essentially we shared in the last presentation as well, but it is slightly modified, two different values of life clearly defined by the Quran. This is the mainstream of mankind. What is the aim of life under man-made systems? To somehow get through the physical life successfully. I've done it, inverted commas, successfully, which is always material side of life. There is no self-development in that concept of life. The Quran deals with human life lived at an animalistic level in detail and notes down the relative values on which it is based. By using these details, we can easily witness, for example, in the word of 2025, that what is noted in the Quran by Allah is always going to create all those problems about which it has warned clearly from the beginning to the end. Now over here, this is an important point for us to understand that the world in which we are living, this is a non-Quranic world. And Quran has described all the salient features, traits of a non-Quranic world. So that means if we do not follow the Quran, then we will get the world like 2025. And if we follow the Quran, then we will get the word which is described in the Quran called system of deen, and this will emerge within the domain of the permanent values, and those who are establishing this system will be displaying all those divine attributes which are also given in the Quran. So essentially both systems are clearly defined in the Quran, and that is what makes it a permanent value. Death ends all. That is biological. There are only two modes of living, and Quran says either you are a Momin or a Kafir, which means if one is not a Momin, then one is a Kafir. So that is the position we should understand in the light of the Quran. The Quran provides another choice which does not exist under the man-made systems. The Quran essentially divides humanity into two categories. It says either people are Kafir or people are Momin. This is at an individual level, and then it divides mankind collectively into two parties. It says either there are Hizbullah in the world or Hizbul Shaitan in the world. And Hizbullah are those who follow the laws of Allah, who accept Allah as a ruler, and they accept the Quran as a system. Hizbul Shaitan are the ones who follow their own desires, who follow man-made systems and do not reject the man-made systems because they are beneficiary of the man-made system. So anyone who is following their own unbridled desires will be lumped together under Hizbul Shaitan. This makes it simple to judge people in the light of the Quranic criteria. And we should keep in mind that these are not our individual choices. We haven't defined them. We haven't put it forward. These are given in the Quran. And it is our choice whether to accept these after rationally thinking through these issues based on evidence or to reject it. Selves developed under the permanent values proceed forward. So this should be very clear in our mind that only those selves will have next life in the hereafter according to the Quran, which have developed within these permanent values. These things sometimes create confusion that will Allah put all these people, the majority, into hell or heaven just because they did not accept the guidance of the Quran. We should be very clear that according to the Quran, Allah does not put anyone into hell or heaven. People make their own decisions in this life where they want to end up after death. And over here there's a verse, in Allah yudkhilul lazina amanu wa amilus salihati jannatin tajri min tahtiha al-anharu wallazina kafaru yatamatta'una wa yakuluna kama ta'kulul an'amu wan naru maswal lahum. And the translation is, verily Allah will admit those who accept Iman and do solid deeds to Jannat beneath which streams flow. And this is the physical side of it. While those who do kufr will enjoy and eat as cattle eat, and the fire will be their abode. And the next verse, Huwallazi khalaqakum faminkum kafirum wa minkum mu'minun wallahu bima ta'maluna basir. And the translation is, it is He, that is Allah, who has created you. And of you are some kafir and some are mu'min, and Allah sees well all that you do. And this makes it very clear that everything follows Allah's law, and in our case it is the law of requital, which is the central law for our accountability. Now the next slide is need for self-evaluation. As students of the Quran, we need to come to terms with our own comprehension of the guidance of Allah and the changes which have taken place within our own individual psyche. Very important point. that once we go through the Quran, accept Iman as noted, for example, in verse 256 of Surah Al-Baqarah, then we should find change within us. For example, about the issues of life before coming to the Quran, under what values we use to resolve those problems, i.e. comparing relative and permanent values. Very important that we should pause and reflect, as Quran says, pause and reflect, that what is in the Quran, is it for me? If it is not for me, then we should leave the book alone. We should not waste any time on the book of Allah and enjoy the man-made system in whatever situation we are. But if we have come to the Quran willingly and are totally dedicated to it and accepted Iman, then we should find that change which is signposted in the Quran. We should also look at the way we became convinced about the Quranic system of deen and how long it took us to reach a particular milestone on this path called Sirat-e-Mustaqim. How we would have liked someone to explain to us about Iman and its importance in living this life. And this is another important point which I have quoted from my own experience, that when I analyzed that how did I come to the Quran, then I realized that no one ever explained to me from the Quran what is in it and how the system of deen functions and what is the role of an individual to establish that system and how to come together. So we should come to terms with that how should I present it to others, by thinking that how should others have presented it to me to understand it. What benefits one will accrue by following this path of life. Very important, because initially it appears there are no benefits to this, because the change in our psyche takes time for us to understand and come to grips with. In terms of physical benefits, these will only come when the system of deen is established. How did we come to this conclusion that the man-made systems can never guide humanity to that success which is noted and highlighted in the Quran? What values guide these systems, and can these lead to acquiring that permanence and firmness in character to which the Quran invites us to reflect repeatedly? And it is good to go through these permanent values which we have just gone through in a list form, and then see that what kind of a system will emerge under the permanent values. Because under the relative values, we can see the kind of system which is existing in the world. And if we are happy with this system, and we think that by minor adjustments here and there, this system will suit me and is fine with me, then really Quran is not for me. We have to change our outlook diametrically in the light of the Quran. We have gone through these aspects previously as well. What will we achieve by doing this? By becoming a Momin as defined by the Quran will help us to understand the reality behind human creation. Why is a human being created? And we have gone through this in detail, that human being is created to create a new self within their own psyche, so that they start looking at the world through the lens of the Quran and take over all those responsibilities which Allah has taken on himself and deliver those as Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, and will lead to strengthening our Iman in the laws applicable to the human self's development. It will pave the way towards understanding the process of getting power in the land as per verse 24:55. Next slide is why the Quran itself is a permanent value. What I've done over here is that in these few slides, I've gone over to put forward the case that Quran is a permanent value, and we will also deal with some aspects in our next part. We have seen through the study of the Quran so far that whatever takes place in human world can be interpreted through its value system. And this is very clear, because in the world, whatever events take place, there are human hands behind it. And wherever there is a solution, there is always a human hand behind it. The man-made systems created by the unbridled human intellect in the world of 2025 are based on relative values. And the human beings who are managing these systems are unwilling to bring any change in these, as they and their cohorts are the beneficiaries. And this is also important, because if we are the beneficiaries of this system, then we should volunteer to work for the system of deen, because being the beneficiary gives us some power as well within the man-made systems. A poor man in a man-made systems does not possess enough power to stand up against the system. It is the people who are powerful within the man-made systems who can stand up against this system after understanding the Quran. Those people who acquire power and become the beneficiary of the system they create do not wish to give up their hold on that system, which provides them with the pleasure to rule over fellow human beings. And this is another point which we should keep in mind, that the Quran asks us to take out all desire to rule over other human beings, because by accepting the rule of Allah, we become equal as human beings. This is the way unbridled human desires and intellects work, that is making choices under relative values. Next point is, there is no guidance within us due to choice and intent. However, we have desires, emotions, and intellect which help us to make decisions on how to live our life. And this is another important point, that we do not have choice and intent. That is why we need external guidance. Animals do not have choice and intent. They work on their instincts. But in the case of human beings, we make choices at every point in our life. The Quran informs us about all the human traits at a fundamental level, and we have gone through these aspects previously as well. For example, human beings are greedy, human beings are create problems, they shed blood, they create chaos in the world, they are unjust, they want quick results, and also tells us that its guidance is to be accepted as a free choice. If not, then the world created by such intellects will contain chaos, imbalance, bloodshed, injustice, fear, and grief. It invites man to become the companion of Allah and acquire that permanence in his self, which is essential for performing the duties in the world. Because Allah has an eternal self and a permanent self. Allah's self does not change. That is why we have seen that Allah follows his own laws. So anyone, any human being who declares himself to be a Momin must keep this in mind, that his self has to change to a different level of eminence, and it has to have all that permanence which is required to establish the system of deen. And Quran says, Allahu waliyul lazina amanu yukhrijuhum minal zulumati ilan nur. Allah is the protector of those who accept Iman from the depths of darkness. He will lead them forth into light. Next slide is, and over here what I've done is I've quoted a verse here regarding human emotions. The Quran's verdict is, Afaraita manittakhadha ilahahu hawahu وَأَضَلَّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ وَخَتَمَ عَلَىٰ سَمْعِهِ وَقَلْبِهِ وَجَعَلَ عَلَىٰ بَصَرِهِ غِشَاوَةً فَمَنْ يَهْدِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ اللَّهِ أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Then do you see such a one who takes as his deity his own vain desires? That is, the people who want to follow their own unguided desires, unbridled desires. Allah has left him astray and sealed his hearing and his heart and put a cover on his sight. So over here what Quran says is that when they follow their own unbridled desires, as a consequence of it, they stop hearing and they stop thinking and only follow their own desires. And this is the law of Allah. Who then will guide him after Allah? Will you not then reflect? Next is, the Quran addresses the whole of mankind in order to draw their attention to the problems created by the man-made systems, and then it invites those who accept its guidance to work towards establishing the system of deen. And that is another important point, that Quran is addressing all of mankind, and then those who accept to follow its message, then it addresses them and tells them that this is how to deal with the system of deen. And Quran says, for example, it states, Ya ayyuhan nasu qad ja'atkum maw'izatum min rabbikum wa shifa'un lima fis sudur wa hudan wa rahmatul lil mu'minin. O mankind, there has come to you a direction from your Rabb and healing for your hearts. For those who are mu'mineen, a guidance and rahmat. And see, on this word from mankind, it goes to mu'mineen. What it is saying is that addressing the mankind and then saying that those who follow this guidance and become mu'mineen, then it becomes a rahmat for them, and they are the ones then who should take on the responsibilities on behalf of Allah in the human world. And shifa'ul lima fi sudur means that it deals with all kinds of issues which are related to human cognition, all those issues, because it provides guidance to human thought process. And if we follow the Quran, then there is no chance of getting depression or having negative feelings and others. And that is why it says that stay together. It tells the Jamaat-e-Momineen, which emerges among mankind through their own efforts by obeying the laws of Allah. And it says, Kuntum khaira ummatin ukhrijat linnase ta'muruna bil ma'rufi wa tanhauna anil munkari wa tu'minuna billah. And it says, you are the best of peoples evolved for mankind. And see the word over here, which I've highlighted, ukhrijat, that you come out of this mankind. And this supports the verse above, that you have become now Jamaat-e-Momineen. Now it is your responsibility to establish the system so that you can forbid evil and promote good according to the Quran. And this is only possible by having Iman in Allah. You are the best of peoples evolved for mankind, enjoining what is right, forbidding what is wrong, and accepting Iman in Allah. Next is, then it tells mankind that you will find differences at all levels among yourselves, and these will lead to disunity, conflicts, mutual rivalry, wars, economic disparity, absence of self-development. The solution is, كان الناس أمة واحدة فبعث الله النبيين مبشرين ومنذرين وأنزل معهم الكتاب بالحق ليحكم بين الناس فيما اختلفوا فيه وما اختلف فيه إلا الذين أوتوه من بعد ما جاءتهم البينات بغيا بينهم فهدى الله الذين آمنوا لما اختلفوا فيه من الحق بإذنه Wallahu yahdi man yasha'u ila siratim mustaqim. There is a lot covered in this verse, and we will go through its details once we reach this under Surah Al-Baqarah. And Quran says, mankind was one single ummah, and Allah sent Anbiya with glad tidings and warnings. And with them He sent the book in Haqq. And over here, Haqq means that it is for constructive results, because without this book of Allah, they will not be able to produce constructive results through their deeds. To judge between people in matters wherein they differ. So that means Quran accepts that people will differ with each other. And what is the solution? Come to the book of Allah and remove your differences. Because what happens is that we start looking at life differently. We look at it that life is not only materialistic side of it, but there is a lot more to it in terms of self-development. And life will go beyond death. And people, if they have an aim in life that we want to succeed not only in this life but in the life of the hereafter, then differences gradually disappear, because then the aim becomes infinite, aim becomes more or less eternal. But the people of the book, after clear signs came to them, did not differ among themselves except through transgression, because their own inner desires prevent them from coming together. That is why under sectarian Islam, there is no possibility of unity, because once one is sectarian, once one is promoting differences and one is capitalizing on differences, because through those differences, their material benefits are attached, they are not going to be united. Allah guided Momineen to al-Haq concerning that wherein they differed. So before the system of deen is established, all those who claim to be Momineen, they have to come together and then work together. And that is why Quran says that Tasimu bihablillahi jamiya wa la tafarraqu, that you should come together, hold on to the rope of Allah, that is the Quran, and then stay together. So this is something which we have to do. It doesn't come automatically. For Allah guides as per His Mashiach to Sirat-e-Mustaqim, and Mashiach over here means as per His law. After addressing mankind, it then focuses its attention on those who are attracted by its guidance and are willing to tread on its defined path. And Quran says, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. This is under Surah Al-Fatiha. Quran had taught us this supplication. And supplication means it is asking us to create this desire, create this need within your heart and mind and follow it. Show us the Sirat-e-Mustaqim. And that means the rest of the Quran after Surah Fatiha is a guidance for mankind and for Momineen. Why this path? Because Allah as Rabb is on this path Himself. And Quran says, Inna Rabbi ala siratim mustaqim. Surely my Rabb is on siratim mustaqim. And this is a proclamation by the messenger Hud in this verse. And we can look at the verses above and below this verse. So important is that if Allah is on siratim mustaqim, which is a straight path, established path, balanced path, then we should also follow behind him. And that tells everything about mu'mineen and muttaqeen. Now recap metaphorical account of Adam. Now I kept this slide from our previous presentation, only part of it just to reiterate what Quran has noted over here. The comment by the Malaika was, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَن يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. And this is at a fundamental level. We should understand that when Quran says that when Adam was being created, Allah said to Malaika that he is going to create this creation, Adam, that is mankind. And then from the lips of Malaika, Quran notes over here, behold, your Rabb said to the Malaika, I will create a Khalifa on earth. And Khalifa means who is the successor of previous creation on the planet earth. They said, will you place therein one who will create fasad and shed blood? And this is an interesting answer by Malaika, that is the universal forces, that this creation who is given choice and intent is going to create fasad, that is imbalance, chaos, wars, conflicts in the world, and will shed blood. And the interesting part is that if we go through subsequent verses up to verse 38 in Surah Al-Baqarah, and we should go through these few times to understand the creation of Adam at a fundamental level and the issues related to that, because Allah does not say that he will not create these problems. So these are accepted, that human beings, because of the differences which will arise between them, they are bound to create these problems at some point in time. Mankind apprised about the guidance of Wahi as an external choice and informed, and this is verse 38. قُلْ نَهْبِطُوا مِنْهَا جَمِيعًا فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى فَمَن تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. We said, that is, Allah said, get you down from here, and if, as is sure, there comes to you guidance from me. And that is the crux of it, that while you will be prone towards creating fasad and bloodshed in the world, guidance will be sent on to you, because you have choice and intent within you and do not have guidance within you. And you will tend to follow your own unbridled intellect and emotions and desires. Here, I will send you this guidance, and if you follow it, what will happen? If, as is sure, there comes to you guidance from me, whosoever follows my guidance, on them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. And we have gone through this aspect under our previous two presentations. So important is for us to understand that it is only through the Quran that the fear and grief can be eliminated from the world. Now, comments on these verses from 30 to 38. The Quran has pointed to 4 problems which an unbridled human intellect creates in the world through wrong choices. And we should keep in mind that these are the choices which human beings deliberately make. For example, the warlike situation which is going on in present-day world, these are the human beings who have made these choices, particularly human beings who are in power, i.e. they're creating fasad, bloodshed, fear, and huzn. Adam, that is the whole of mankind, possesses the ability to characterize all things of the universe and bring these under its use. His initial life on the planet was without any divisions and parties, and he was free to use its means of sustenance anywhere. However, he resorted to causing divisions and made parties. And this is what shajar means. Normally it is translated as tree, whereas shajar actually means the way tree also branches off into different branches. So they started making parties. And we have seen under relative values that if you make parties, then you are going to create problems. And as a result, turned his initial life of Jannat into one full of conflicts. This leads to the creation of fear and huzn. Fear of huzn is a product of conflicts and chaos in the world. And some is, of course, created deliberately by rich and powerful in the world. He is provided with another choice through the Quran to help turn his earthly life into Jannat by following its guidance. This will become free from fear and huzn, and this is the responsibility of Jamaat-e-Momineen, who have to come together and then create this system of deen with the help of Allah, that is through the Quran. Now, next slide is bringing mankind out of darknesses into light. The Quran has called itself light, which helps to bring light to those regions of the human world, that is physical and cognitive, which are immersed in darknesses. Now, this is another important point, is that Quran says that without the Quran, which is light, you will be living your life under darknesses, but these darknesses you may not be able to find out unless you go through the Quran and find it out. Some darknesses we can figure out ourselves as well, but those are within the relative values. In order to understand the broader concept within the permanent values, we have to come to the Quran. And the verse is, Alif Lam Ra Kitabun Anzalnahu Alayka Litukhrijan Nasa Minal Zulumat ila Nur Bi'izni Rabbihim ila Siratil Azizil Hamid. Allah, Alim and Rahim, has decreed a book which we have revealed unto you in order that you may lead mankind out of the darknesses into light by the izn of their Rabb. And izn over here means by the will of Allah, by his book, that is law, Mashiach, to the path of Aziz and Hamid. And Aziz will be that you will get power, and Hamid means that you will also understand that why it is done. You will be able to appreciate it. Now, the important point over here is that it is addressed to the messenger of Allah, and now it is addressed to each one of us who have decided to become the students of the Quran. So that means that first we should know the darknesses of life which are created by man-made systems, and we have seen some of these darknesses implicit in these relative values. And we can also see all the light which the permanent values are putting forward, are showing us that these relative values can disappear if we follow the permanent values, because then we can compare and contrast and then make a choice which values suit us. Then it highlights this aspect by quoting the example of Bani Israel, to whom the messenger Musa was sent. And Quran doesn't leave anything to our imagination. It also gives examples and explains the hikmat of every law, every permanent value given in the Quran, and we can figure it out by discussing it. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا مُوسَى بِآيَاتِنَا أَنْ أَخْرِجْ قَوْمَكَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. Exactly same terms are used as in the first verse. وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. And I have highlighted it. This is a beautiful part of this verse. وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. That if you want that era in which Allah's laws, Allah's rule is implemented, and the pleasure of it, the aesthetic sense of it, the satisfaction of it, that freedom from fear and huzn of it, then you will find a lot of motivation to work for the system of deen. Inna fi zalika la ayatil kulli sabarin shakur. And these are again two beautiful wordings over here, sabr and shakur, which means that you will acquire that patience, because it is not a journey of 1 day or 2 days. It is a journey of rest of our life once we have come to this path. And shakur, of course, means to bring out our best, and that best which is coming out on this path will become an evidence to our own self that we are on Sirat-e-Mustaqim. We sent the messenger Musa with our signs. Bring out your people from the darknesses into light and teach them to remember the days of Allah. And this is another beautiful thing, that those of us who understand it earlier, then they should share it and pass it on to others. Surely in this are signs for such as are sabur and mashkur. Next is, what did the messenger Musa remind Bani Israel with? وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ أَذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ أَنْجَاكُمْ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَسُومُونَكُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ وَيُذَبِّحُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَكُمْ وَفِي ذَلِكُمْ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ. And this is a beautiful verse to tell us that if you find yourself in this kind of a world in which Bani Israel were living, Don't be disheartened. Don't become fearful. There is a solution for this. Remember, Musa said to his people, call to mind the blessing of Allah to you when He delivered you from the people of Pharaoh. They set you hard tasks and punishments, slaughtered your sons, and let your women folk live. And of course, we have gone through these meanings because it is metaphorical over here, which essentially means that he used to promote those who were weak in the land and subdue those, suppress those who were good and wise and knowledgeable. Therein was a tremendous hardship as per Mashiach of Allah for you from your Rabb. And over here we should know it that it is, when Quran says it is Rabbikum, means that since there was no rububiyat in the system, and as a result all these problems existed. So if you create a system of rububiyat, the purpose for which you are created as human beings, and establish the system, then all these things will cease to exist. We can also analyze it in reverse order, which means that if we want to avoid all this situation, then we should establish the system of deen. And if the system is already established, all those who are running that system must keep this verse and many verses like this in mind, that if you abandon the system of deen, then this is what will happen to you, that you will become slaves of other human beings. And finally, the Quran helps to evaluate all aspects of human deeds. Those who wish to obtain the maximum benefits from their deeds in life. And this is another beautiful verse which I came across, and I thought I'll share it as part of this presentation. And Quran says, Inna hazal Qurana yahdi lillati hiya aqwamu wa yubashshirul mu'mineen allazina yamaluna salihati anna lahum ajran kabira. Verily, this Quran does guide to that which is most right, and gives the glad tidings to Momineen who do salih deeds, that they shall have a supreme reward. We have gone through these aspects previously as well in relation to human self-development, that we have certain potentials, latent potentials, and some of these latent potentials we manifest even under the man-made system. For example, we acquire education, we get training, we do a lot of things, we earn a living, we get married, bring some children into this world, and then we die and leave this world. Those are the potentials which are displayed even without the help of the Quran, because we are part of the man-made system, and whatever the man-made system around us does, we also do it. But Quran says there is a lot more inside your consciousness. There is a lot more which you should bring out by using the Quran, even in this physical life. And this is what it is saying over here, aqwamu. And that is why Quran says, Sirat-e-Mustaqim, that path which is balanced, which is straight, which is established, on which you will also gain nourishment as you proceed further. So all those latent potentials which we can bring out away by moving to the Quran will include what we do within the man-made system. But what Quran is saying is that once you follow these permanent values and acquire some of these divine attributes within you, even under man-made system, you will see that you will become a different human being. You will acquire a new life, that life which will see the things differently from those who are living at an animalistic level. Next line is, it tells man that his earthly life needs the Quranic guidance to help him achieve success and prosperity in the worldly life as well as in the life of the hereafter. وَقِيلَ لِلَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا مَاذَا أَنزَلَ رَبُّكُمْ قَالُوا خَيْرًا لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا فِي هَٰذِهِ الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةٌ وَلَا دَارُ الْآخِرَةِ خَيْرٌ وَلَا نِعْمَ دَارُ الْمُتَّقِينَ. And we can see that we have gone through numerous verses of the Quran, and we have seen that how Quran is motivating us to adopt this path and asking us that the pleasures associated with following this path are far more multiplied than the pleasures you will get from the man-made system. To Muttaqeen it is said, what is it that your Rabb has revealed? They say, all that is khair. To those who do good, there is good in this world, and the home of the hereafter is even better, and excellent indeed is the home of Muttaqeen. I've highlighted khair, which means that your sphere of making choices will expand. That is, by coming to the Quran, you will start seeing those things which you couldn't see otherwise under the man-made system. It is just like telescope, that with a naked eye we can see things up to an extent, but with a telescope we can see things far beyond the limits of our eye. So the Quran is the one which is helping us, which will help us, which can help us to not only look into this life, but a lot is given in the Quran to look beyond our death as well. Helps to acquire new life. Avaman kana maitan fahyanahu waj'alna lahu nuran yamshi bihi fin nase kaman matlahu fi zulumati laysa bikharijin minha. Kazalika zuyyina lil kafirina ma kanu ya'malun. Can he who was dead, to whom we gave life and light, whereby he can walk among mankind, be like him who is in the depth of darkness? And this is beautifully explained, the real situation of life without the Quran and after coming to the Quran. Quran says that without the Quran, you do not live a life of a living human being, because you haven't brought out your latent potentials, which can give you life in this world to see things differently and then to look at the things for the hereafter. So this is an important aspect coming out of this verse, that by coming to the Quran, we give new life to our own self, from which he can never come out. Thus to those who do kufr, their own deeds seem pleasing. And this is something which prevents us from coming to the Quran, those people to whom we give message and they don't want to come to the Quran because they think that life ends with death. And this is the position of all those people as well who are in the domain of religions, because they leave the word to their concept of God and they think that somehow they will get through the next life as well by doing some charitable deeds over here. Whereas Quran puts true reality of human existence right before our eyes. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.